I'm standing at the back of the ceremony hall, champagne flute trembling in my hand, watching Catherine smooth down her daughter's veil. The late afternoon sun filters through the stained glass windows, casting fractured rainbows across her face, and I have to look away because everyone here can see me, and I'm terrified that what I feel is written all over my face. Sarah looks radiant in her wedding dress, completely unaware that her maid of honor and her mother share a secret that could shatter this perfect moment into a million irreparable pieces. 6 months ago, I would have never believed I'd be standing here, my heart breaking and soaring simultaneously, in love with a woman I had no right to touch. 6 months ago, I thought I knew exactly who I was. It started so innocently. I'd known Sarah since our sophomore year of college, and Catherine had always just been Sarah's mom, pleasant, elegant, someone who made excellent lasagna, and asked thoughtful questions about my marketing career. But 2 years ago, Catherine's husband left her for a colleague, and something in her changed. The careful polish cracked just enough to reveal someone raw and real underneath. I started noticing things I'd never paid attention to before. The way she tucked her dark hair behind her ear when she was thinking how her laugh sounded different, when it was genuine versus polite, the sadness that lingered in her eyes, even when she smiled. I was spending more time at the Harrison house that spring. Sarah had gotten serious with her boyfriend Marcus, and, honestly, I felt a little left behind. My own dating life was a string of disappointing dinner dates with men who looked good on paper but felt wrong in person. I'd stopped trying to force connections that weren't there. So when Sarah invited me for family dinners, I said yes more often than I probably should have. I told myself I was there for the company, for the warmth of a family meal for my best friend. I didn't admit that I was memorizing the sound of Catherine's voice, or that I volunteered to help with dishes just to stand next to her at the sink. The first time I felt something shift, we were all sitting around the dinner table. Catherine was talking about a building project she was designing, her hands moving expressively as she described the interplay of light and space. She was passionate about architecture in a way that made everything else fade into the background. I found myself leaning forward, completely absorbed, and when she glanced at me mid-sentence, our eyes locked for just a beat too long. My stomach flipped in a way I'd only felt with romantic interests before, and I immediately pushed the feeling down. I was reading too much into a moment of connection. That was all it was. But the moments kept coming. Her hand on my shoulder as she reached past me for the wine bottle. The way she sought out my opinion on things, like it mattered more than polite conversation required. The night she confided in me about how lonely she felt, how the divorce had made her question everything about her life, and I'd wanted so badly to hold her that my arms physically ached. I started lying awake at night, confused by thoughts I'd never had before. I'd dated men my entire adult life. I'd never questioned my sexuality, never felt drawn to women in that way. So what the hell was happening to me? The evening that changed everything started with a text from Sarah. "Can you drop off my blue folder at the house?" I left it on the kitchen counter and I need it for tomorrow's meeting. Mom should be home. Simple enough. Routine. I told myself the flutter in my chest was nothing as I drove over. That I wasn't disappointed when I'd see Catherine for all of 5 minutes before leaving. Just dropping something off. In and out. But when Catherine opened the door, I could tell immediately that something was wrong. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her usually perfect posture slightly crumpled. "Sarah's not here," she said unnecessarily, and I should have handed over the folder and left. Instead, I heard myself asking if she was okay. She laughed, but it came out broken. "I'm fine. Just one of those days, you know." Rain had started falling, tapping against the windows with increasing urgency. "Come in for a minute." "You shouldn't drive in this." It was barely drizzling, but I stepped inside anyway, drawn by something I didn't want to name. We ended up in the living room, Catherine pouring 2 glasses of red wine with hands that shook slightly. The house felt different without Sarah there, more intimate somehow, like we were occupying a space that existed outside normal rules. "I'm sorry," Catherine said after her second glass, curling into the corner of the couch. "You didn't sign up for this." I'm supposed to be the put-together adult here. In the soft lamplight, she looked younger than her 52 years, vulnerable in a way that made my chest tight. "You don't always have to be put together," I said quietly. "Not with me." The words felt weighted with more meaning than I'd intended. Catherine looked at me then, really looked at me, and the air between us changed. Charged. Dangerous. I watched her eyes drop to my lips, watched her catch herself and look away, color rising in her cheeks. "Emma," she whispered, and the way she said my name made something inside me crack wide open. "We should." But she didn't finish the sentence. We were moving toward each other, drawn by gravity or madness or something I had no words for. I could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive. Could feel the heat radiating from her body. Our faces were inches apart, and I could see my own confusion in what reflected in her eyes. Then headlights swept across the living room window. We sprang apart like teenagers caught making out, hearts pounding. A car passed by without stopping, but the spell was broken. I grabbed my purse with shaking hands, mumbled something incoherent about the rain letting up, and practically ran to my car. I didn't let myself look back, even though I could feel her watching me from the doorway. I drove home in a daze, my lips tingling from a kiss that never happened, my entire understanding of myself tilting on its axis. The next 2 weeks were torture. I threw myself into work, went on a date with a guy from my gym that felt like sleepwalking through someone else's life, and avoided Sarah's calls just enough to not be obvious about it. I couldn't stop replaying that moment on the couch, couldn't stop wondering what would have happened if that car hadn't driven by. The wondering was eating me alive. I'd never felt this way about anyone, man or woman. The intensity of it scared me. This wasn't some casual attraction I could brush off. This was something that had the power to ruin everything. When Sarah finally cornered me for coffee, I thought she knew. I thought somehow she'd de-hued it out and was about to end our friendship right there at our favorite cafe. But instead, she looked worried. "Have you talked to Mom lately?" "She's been weird. Distant. I'm worried about her, but every time I ask, she says she's fine." "You guys have gotten close, maybe you could check on her? She might open up to you." The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so painful. Sarah was asking me to do the one thing I absolutely shouldn't do. I should have said no. Should have made an excuse. Should have protected all of us from what was building like a storm just offshore. Instead, I heard myself say, "Of course. I'll stop by this week." 3 days later, I was back at the Harrison house. This time, Catherine opened the door, already knowing Sarah wasn't home, and the look on her face told me she knew exactly why I was really there. We didn't pretend there was another reason. I walked inside. She closed the door behind me, and we stood in the foyer just looking at each other. The tension that had been building for months was a living thing between us, demanding acknowledgement. "I can't stop thinking about you," Catherine said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've tried. God, I've tried. But Emma, I can't." Her honesty broke something loose in me. All the denial, all the confusion, all the fear crystallized into one undeniable truth. I felt the same way. "I don't understand what's happening to me," I admitted, tears burning behind my eyes. "I've never with a woman, I couldn't even finish the sentence." Catherine crossed the space between us and took my hands in hers. Her touch sent electricity up my arms. "I know," she said softly. "I know it's confusing. I've known I was bisexual since college, but I buried it when I got married. Spent 25 years trying to be someone I thought I should be. And then you ... She lifted one hand to my face, her thumb brushing my cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "You make me want to stop hiding." When she kissed me, the world fell away. Everything I'd been taught about who I was supposed to be, who I was supposed to want, evaporated in the heat of her mouth on mine. This was nothing like kissing the men I'd dated. This was coming home to a place I didn't know existed. We stumbled toward the stairs, pulling at each other's clothes between kisses, desperate and terrified and finally honest. That night, in Catherine's bedroom with moonlight spilling across tangled sheets, I discovered parts of myself I'd kept locked away without even knowing it. She touched me like I was something precious and fragile and strong all at once, and I fell apart in her hands, reborn into someone who finally made sense. The morning after was harder. Reality crashed back in with the sunrise. Catherine lay beside me, her dark hair spread across the pillow, and I could see the fear creeping into her eyes as she woke. "Sarah," she whispered, and the name was like cold water. What had we done? I was her daughter's best friend. She was my best friend's mother. The betrayal was so profound I felt physically sick. "This can't happen again," Catherine said, sitting up and pulling the sheet around herself. "Emma, we can't." But even as she said it, she was reaching for me, her resolve crumbling before it fully formed. We made love again in the morning light, slower this time, tinged with desperation because we both knew we were crossing a line we could never uncross. We tried to stay away from each other after that. We really did. I made excuses to avoid family dinners. Catherine threw herself into work, but the pull between us was magnetic. A text to check in would turn into an hour-long phone call. A quick coffee would end with us in my apartment, clothes scattered across the floor, consequences be damned. We were addicts and each other was our drug of choice. Sarah noticed something was off. "You've been distant lately," she said one afternoon while we were supposed to be shopping for her engagement party dress. "Is everything okay? Did something happen?" I fed her lies that tasted like ash in my mouth. "Work stress, family stuff. I was fine, just busy." She believed me because why wouldn't she? Her best friend and her mother having an affair was so far outside the realm of possibility that it would never occur to her to suspect it. The guilt was crushing. I'd lie in Catherine's arms, drowning in feelings I'd never experienced before, and hate myself for what we were doing to Sarah. But I couldn't stop. God help me. I didn't want to stop. Because somewhere between the secret meetings and stolen kisses, I'd fallen completely, irrevocably in love. Not just with Catherine, but with this version of myself that existed when I was with her. The woman who was brave enough to want what she wanted, convention be damned. Catherine felt it too. "I love you," she whispered one night, her voice breaking on the words. "I know I shouldn't. I know this is wrong. But Emma, I love you." I kissed her instead of answering, because what could I say? That I loved her too? That I was terrified we were going to destroy everything? That I'd never felt so right and so wrong at the same time? All of it was true, and none of it changed anything. Then came the engagement announcement. Sarah called me, squealing with joy, and I felt my stomach drop. "Marcus proposed!" "Oh my God, Emma, we're getting engaged. And I want you to be my maid of honor. Say yes. Please say yes." I said yes because what else could I do? And when she told me her mom would be helping plan everything, that we'd all be spending tons of time together, I felt the trap closing around us. Catherine and I stood in Sarah's kitchen 3 days later, supposedly looking at wedding magazines while Sarah was at work, and just stared at each other helplessly. "We have to tell her," I said, but Catherine shook her head violently. "She hate us both. Emma, I'll lose my daughter." Her voice cracked. "I can't lose my daughter. So what do we do? Sneak around for months while planning her wedding? Watch her be happy about her future while we destroy her trust?" I was angry now, at the situation, at us, at how impossible everything had become. She's going to find out eventually. And the longer we wait, the worse it'll be. We didn't tell her. We spent 3 months in a special kind of hell, stealing moments when we could, lying constantly, watching Sarah's joy and knowing we were going to take a sledgehammer to it eventually. The planning sessions were torture. The 3 of us would sit around Catherine's dining room table, talking about flowers and seating charts. And I'd feel Catherine's foot brush against mine under the table. Such a small touch, but it made my entire body come alive. Sarah would laugh at something, completely oblivious, and I'd want to die from the guilt. We nearly got caught one afternoon. Sarah came home early while Catherine and I were kissing in the kitchen, and we barely had time to spring apart before she walked in. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Sarah looked between us, and for one terrible moment, I thought she knew. But then she just smiled and said, "Glad you two are getting along so well. It makes this whole thing easier." The irony was devastating. That night, Catherine called me crying. "We have to end this. Emma, we can't keep doing this to her. It's not fair. It's not right." She was right, and we both knew it. But ending it felt impossible. How do you walk away from the person who taught you who you really are? How do you go back to living a lie when you finally learned what truth feels like? Or we tell her, I said quietly. We stop hiding and we tell her the truth. All of it. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long, I thought she'd hung up. Then Catherine whispered, "Together. We tell her together." She deserves that much. We planned it carefully. Asked Sarah to come over to Catherine's house on a Sunday afternoon. Made sure we had time, that she wouldn't feel ambushed or rushed. Catherine was shaking when Sarah arrived, and I wasn't much better. Sarah looked between us, her smile fading as she registered our serious expressions. "What's wrong? Is someone sick?" "Sit down, honey," Catherine said. And I heard 25 years of motherhood in those words, all the love and fear bound up together. Sarah sat, and I sat beside her, and Catherine stood because she couldn't seem to make herself stop moving. "We need to tell you something, and it's going to be hard to hear. But you deserve the truth. I won't replay every word of what came next." The way Sarah's face went from confused to horrified. The moment she understood and jumped up from the couch like we'd burned her. The way she looked at me and said, "How could you?" with such betrayal in her voice that I wanted to disappear. The way she looked at her mother and whispered, "You're supposed to be my mom," like we'd shattered something fundamental in her understanding of the world. Catherine cried. I cried. Sarah didn't cry. She just stood there, trembling with anger and hurt, looking at us like we were strangers. "I need to leave," she finally said. "I can't. I need to not be here right now." She left, and the sound of the door closing behind her was the loneliest sound I'd ever heard. The weeks that followed were agony. Sarah wouldn't return my calls or texts. Marcus reached out once to say she needed space, and that he was there for her. Catherine fell apart in ways I'd never seen, convinced she'd lost her daughter forever. I held her while she sobbed and wondered if love was supposed to hurt this much, if doing the right thing was supposed to feel like death. But slowly, painfully, Sarah started to respond. Short texts at first, then a phone call. Then finally, a request to meet for coffee. Just her and me. I went prepared for her to end our friendship permanently, to tell me I was dead to her. Instead, she looked tired and older than her 28 years, and said, "I've been talking to a therapist about all of this. About you and Mom." "Sarah, I'm so sorry," I started, but she held up her hand. "Let me finish. I'm still angry. I'm still hurt. I feel betrayed, and I don't know if I'll ever fully get over that." She took a shaky breath. "But my therapist asked me if I thought you and Mom were actually in love or if this was just some weird thing, and I realized I already knew the answer. I've never seen my mom look at anyone the way she looks at you. And you're different now. Happier. More yourself." Tears streamed down my face. "I never meant to hurt you. I never wanted any of this. But, Sarah, I love her. I'm in love with your mother, and I don't know how to make that okay, but it's the truth." "I know," Sarah said quietly. "That's what makes this so hard. If it was just something casual, something meaningless, I could hate you both and move on. But it's not. And that means I have to figure out how to live in a world where my best friend and my mom are together." She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I'm not there yet, but I'm trying. That's all I can promise right now." Now standing at her wedding, watching her marry Marcus with all our friends and family surrounding us, I can see how far we've come. It's been 6 months since that awful conversation. 6 months of careful rebuilding, of Sarah slowly letting us back in, of family dinners that are awkward, but real. She invited both of us to the wedding. She didn't have to do that. The invitation was an olive branch, a sign that maybe, eventually, we could find our way to something like forgiveness. Catherine catches my eye from across the room and smiles, small and private. "We're not public yet. We're taking it slow, letting Sarah adjust at her own pace. But we're together and we're done hiding." After the ceremony, during the reception, Sarah pulls me aside. "I'm glad you came," she says, and for the first time in months, her hug feels genuine. "Both of you." I meant what I said. It's going to take time. But you're still my best friend. And she's still my mom. I'm working on accepting the "and you're together" part. That's all we can ask. I say, my voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for trying." It means everything. Yeah, well, Sarah says, pulling back and wiping her eyes. My therapist says holding on to anger only hurts me. So I'm choosing to believe that you two are going to be happy together, and that maybe, eventually, I can be happy for you. She squeezes my hand. Just give me time, okay? All the time you need, I promise. Later, after the first dance and the cake cutting, I find Catherine on the terrace. She leans into me, and I wrap my arm around her waist, marveling at how natural it feels. How right. The road ahead won't be easy. We've hurt someone we both love, and that wound will take years to fully heal. But standing here with her, under the stars, I know this is where I'm supposed to be. I spent 28 years thinking I knew who I was, following a script written by other people's expectations. Then one night, everything changed. Catherine showed me that identity isn't fixed, that love doesn't follow rules, and that sometimes the most unexpected connection is the one that finally makes you feel like yourself. We've lost things along the way. Innocence, certainty, the easy comfort of uncomplicated relationships. But what we've gained is immeasurable. Truth. Authenticity. The courage to choose love even when it costs us everything. Is it worth it? Ask me on the hard days when Sarah still flinches away from us, and I might hesitate. But ask me when Catherine kisses me goodnight, when she looks at me like I'm her whole world, when I wake up next to her and feel more at home than I ever have in my entire life. Ask me then, and the answer is always unequivocally yes. Have you ever discovered something about yourself that changed everything? Have you ever found love in the most unexpected, complicated place and had to choose between what's easy and what's true? Maybe you're standing at your own crossroads right now, terrified of what it means to step off the path everyone expects you to follow. I want you to know that you're not alone. Your story matters. Your truth matters. And sometimes the love that breaks all the rules is exactly the love that finally sets you free. Share your story in the comments below. Your courage might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.